Tobit, take two. Well, good morning, Deacon Dave here, giving you a recap pretty much of the reading that we had this week, which was from the book of Tobit. Tobit's a beautiful story, about 14 chapters long, probably takes about a half hour to read. Really good stuff. It really shows both the what's going on, the religious biases, and all how religion played into people's lives in those days. This is, he lived in Babylon, in the town of Nineveh, and that was obviously part of the Babylonian captivity at that point. We don't know where the story came from, whether it was passed down from generation to generation, but it's still an absolutely beautiful story. Lines up historically pretty well with everything that was going on at the time. So we really don't know what it came. We think it was written probably around the 2nd century BC, but that's tough to say. So what we end up having is a book of a very, very, very pious man and his basically going through life. How we go through it, what we see, what we're doing, and exactly, all those things that happen. Tobit, flees his home, all this stuff, as one of the Ninevites find out that he's been burying the dead. Now, for a Jew at the time, not being deprived of a burial was just abhorrent. It was just a horrible thing. So that's where Tobit came. He was very pious, making sure that everything was taken care of according to the law, and as best as he could out in Babylon, obviously. Couldn't really go to the temple too often, obviously. It wasn't there, but I'm sure he probably did as a kid. So, strangest thing, I didn't realize sparrows had this much power over the eyes, but one way or the other, you can read it for yourself how this happened, but Tobit became blind, and as he was sitting out taking a nap. And so, after a bit, he and his son sort of, said, all right, I know I'm going to give up my life. That's fine, no problem. He asked God, and Tobit asked God to take his life. Same time, a girl named Sarah asked to take his life. Roundabout way, Raphael got involved, the angel, and came down, took care of things. Again, story itself is absolutely beautiful, but maybe a little bit of a background on that. The Babylonians came in and captured Judea, defeated Israel. Tobit is one of the peoples that was taken to Nineveh in the 8th century. And, it leads to the question of who wrote the book. We don't know. And there's lots of conjecture and things like that. But, it starts out as a first-person story, switches over to a third-person story. So, it's a very difficult thing to say who wrote it. So, but it's very fascinating. It does give a lot of input into what was going on at that time. So, take the few minutes, read the whole thing. It's 14 chapters, like I said, half-hour reading. Absolutely wonderful story. So, now, we know that the book itself was lost for centuries. We no idea. It was in the Bible, obviously, but the actual story itself was lost. And, we don't know where it went for a long time. But lo and behold, we end up with basically the longest running library in the world was established. And we have the earliest version we had up until the 1940s of the Book of Tobit. And so this library, which was called the Monastery of St. Catharines, is what it was called, and this library operated for years and years. It's actually at the base of the mountains that have Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb, and it was a brilliant place, a place very, very, very important to Jews, Orthodox, Muslims, Christians, etc. So this is a marvelous building that's out there, and I'll try to show you some pictures of that. Um, Now, we actually, all of a sudden, back in 1944, they're going through the Qumran diggings, and over, voila, here comes a book of Tobit in Hebrew. So this, there's been some mystery and things like that that's gone on with this, but it's amazing. This book goes back. We have furthest that goes back to they founded in 1952 apparently, and just an absolutely amazing find. So that was between St. Catherine and the Qumran place. We have very early, very 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 early writings of the Book of Tobit, both Hebrew and in Greek. Now, there's always the question is like, why is it that the Book of Tobit is in the main book in the Catholic Bibles, and then it's called in the Apocrypha in some Protestant places? Other Protestant denominations don't have it at all. And a lot of this has to do going back in history and things like that. With many people will get the idea that they'll say either that the Protestants took Bible books out, or the Protestants say the Catholics added it. Enough of the polemics. What basically ended up happening, there was two sets of the Bible, of the Old Testament, in around the time of Jesus. There was the Hebrew Bible, which was written completely in Hebrew and included the 39 books that are in the Protestant Bible official. And then there was the Septuagint, which was written in Greek and contained 46 Old Testament books. So the same 27 on the New Testament. But that's where the Protestants, when they came in, probably because only the Catholics had the other version, the Protestants decided just to say, forget it, enough, we're using the other, we're going to use the Hebrew ones. And of course, the Hebrew Bible was said to, have only the books that were written in Hebrew, things like that. Well, we find out now, much later, through Qumran, through a lot of the archaeology, that indeed all these books were written both in Greek and in Hebrew. So, a lot of the history goes back and forth beyond it. But getting beyond the polemics of Protestant versus Catholic, it's a great book. Whatever it is, read it. And don't be too worried about that part of it. Read it. It's an excellent book. Even in most of the Protestant denominations have it as part of the Apocrypha. So I'd like to also get back to St. Catharines, because that was an amazing thing that I found out about the last couple of weeks. It was set up as a library, or first it was set up as a monastery, obviously, in the 4th and 5th century, around the time of St. Justinian. And he pretty much allowed the building of this, again, right at the base of Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb, etc. Fascinating place. They began a library, in effect. Take the books out, bring them back, etc., read them, study them, etc. They had all these things. It's like one of the, if you see, and again, like I said, I'll show pictures what I can, but it's an amazing library, really. And it's to this day, it's still operating. It is by far the longest operating library in the history of man that we know of, at least. Who knows? I'd hate to be the one who has to bring that book back that was overdue from the 5th century, but that's probably not going to happen. I know I don't have anything here at my house, so that's good. Now, I think it's also important that we realize that this Book of Tobit brings a lot of ideas of what the Jewish, how the Jewish were able to take care of Judaism while they were out in Babylon. Long before Nehemiah and Ezra came back to set up the temple again and all that stuff, and then against all the the against the Greeks and the Romans and all the conquerors that came through. Yeah, you had a lot of things going on there. So if it was written in the 2nd century BC, probably getting a little spillover of that as well. So, which may be why the book was written at that point. So, anyway, the Book of Tobit is wonderful. I would sit there and do a lot of research on St. Catharines. Very good. And just, remember, the Bible is good. Read it. Enjoy yourself. God's talking to you through it. So that's what you want to do. If you have any questions, of course, leave it down. Leave any questions you got, and I'll try to answer them best I can. So you take care of yourself. Take care. God bless.